Hello, I'm here again with Ian, and we're going to basically discuss beauty today. So we have a couple of texts, Homer's The Odyssey. We used Robert Fagel's translation into English, Book Six, and also a philosophical book called On Beauty and Being Just by Elaine Scarry. And we'll especially talk about the first of two parts of that book, On Beauty and Being Wrong. But yeah, first we'll kind of give a little summary of book six of the Odyssey and then start talking about beauty.
That's good. Yeah, so in the Odyssey, we are towards the end. Odysseus is he's on his way home for the whole book, obviously the whole tale, but he's getting pretty close here. He's just left, I think it's Circe's Isle, and is it Circe
I think so.
or
Yeah. And then
Calypso? No, it's Calypso, I think.
okay, yeah, you're
Are they
probably
this?
right. But then
I need
he's
to
kind
brush
of
up, but he's left somewhere. He's been stuck for a while. He's been on a raft. Poseidon wrecks the raft. Odysseus is like, I assume, clinging to some bit of driftwood for, he says, about 20 days. No food, only seawater, having a pretty rough time. And he ends up storm tossed onto this beach um, of, what's the name of this place?
oh, it's the
Scheria.
land. Mm,
It's the land of the Phaeacians, but the island is known as Scheria or Cherry or something like that.
mm,
Um, but it's the Phaeacians' land, the Phaeacian city. It's sort of out beyond most of humanity, out amongst the waves. It has this sort of island paradise kind of feel to it. It's one of sort of the early utopian visions, according to Wikipedia. So
mm.
he washes up there and goes to sleep pretty quick. He sort of crawls off in some bushes and goes to sleep. And meanwhile, Athena, his patroness, uh, tries to find him some help. So she goes to the Phaeacians' capital city, and to the home of Alcinous, the king, and particularly Alcinous's daughter Nausicaa, no relation to the Ghibli movie. Um, and she presents Nausicaa with a dream, encouraging her to she must get up and wash her clothes and make herself beautiful because she wants to be married. Her marriage is not far off, and it's fitting for a young princess to be decked out in beautiful, clean clothes to prepare to meet her suitors. Um, which I'm just realizing is kind of an interesting thing compared to Odysseus's wife and all of her suitors.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so there's a little bit of a weird mirroring there. But Athena shows up in a dream as one of Nausicaa's friends, uh, the shipman Deimos's daughter, and encourages Nausicaa to go and do the washing. So Nausicaa wakes up with the dream still in mind, um, and she is described quite eloquently as a beautiful young woman. And she goes to her father and says, "Father, can I have the wagon?" And she's a little modest about it. She says, "Can I have the wagon? I would like to go wash all of our clothing in the river. You deserve to have nice clothes. My brothers, two of them are married, but the other three are bachelors, and they're always wanting clean clothes. So it's my duty to go and clean everybody's clothes." Um, and she's too shy to touch on her hopes for marriage, but it says her father sees through all of it and says, "Of course, I won't deny you anything. Please, I'll have the men harness the wagon with the mules. You and your maids, your sort of helpers, go out and you can go down to the river and wash up all the clothes." So they do that. They load up all the laundry, and the princess goes out with her maids, uh, and they're given a picnic lunch and a flask of suppling olive oil to put on after bathing. So apparently that used to be sort of like a post-bath ritual in Greece. And they go down to the river, and they go down to the river, and they let the mules go out and graze. They bring all the clothes down to the washing pools. I guess there are some. The river must flow through some rocky pools, so you can wash, but you're not worried about the clothes
Mhm.
drifting away. Um, and they rushed through the washing, one girl racing the next to finish first until they'd scoured and rinsed off all the grime. and then they spread out the wet clothes along the pebbly beach to dry. And then at that point, the girls kind of relax and have a good time. They bathe, they oil themselves up, I think for health. Um, Not to get too lewd here, they seems to be good for their skin. They have their picnic and they're sitting along the banks and they're waiting for the clothes to dry. And here we have quite a description of Nausicaa as somewhat akin to Artemis, I believe. Yeah, Artemis,
Mm.
Leto and Zeus's daughter, Apollo's sister, the huntress, the young virgin. Um, she outshines them all, though all are lovely. So we get this sort of description of Nausicaa as this sort of epitome of young beauty.
Mm.
Nausicaa outshone all her maids, a virgin still unwed. Um, but then she's about to go unfold the clothes, and Athena gets this idea of how to wake up Odysseus, and the ball that the girls are tossing back and forth is missed and splashes down in a deep pool, and they all cry out,
Mm.
sort of, "Oh, the ball!" Something like that. Maybe they just shout, and that shout wakes Odysseus, and he wakes up in the bushes off to the side, and he's very nervous. Like, what's this shouting? What's going on? Barely coming to himself, barely alive, starved, shipwrecked, covered in grime, covered in salt of the sea. Um, Overall, pretty filthy. And he's muttering to himself, and he gets up and he creeps out of the bushes. He's kind of looking around, and he grabs a large branch from an olive tree to cover his nakedness. Apparently, he lost all his clothes while shipwrecked as well. Um, and he's described pretty intensely here. I'm gonna read this. It's pretty short. It says, "Out he stalked as a mountain lion, exultant in his power, strides through wind and rain. His eyes blaze, and he charges sheep or oxen or chases wild deer. But his hunger drives him on to go for flocks, even to raid the best defended homestead. So Odysseus moved out." So he's painted in quite a predatory light in this particular little description. And he's approaching these very already described, very lovely young women at play in the sun. So there's, to my mind, we're sort of set up here for some sort of predatory activity,
Mm.
but it doesn't happen. So he goes out. Um, it says, he was a terrible sight, all crusted, caked with brine. And the girls scatter. They panic. Ah, oh my God, who's this? Who's this wild beast coming out of the woods? They're also, we find out later that the Phaeacians do not get visitors. They're off on their own. So to have
Mm.
anyone unfamiliar that's a very strange thing for them.
Mm.
But Athena plants courage within the heart of Nausicaa, and Nausicaa stands her ground before this wild, predatory-like man. And Odysseus comes up, and his concern is, should he fling his arms around her knees and plead for her help, or stand back and plead with a winning word? So he's very focused on how to relate to this girl to get help from her. And he decides to be a little more subtle, not to just give over to his emotions and collapse at her feet, but to sort of entreat her,
Mm.
endearing, sly, and suave, it says in the book. "I am at your mercy. Are you a goddess or a mortal?" And he too compares her to Artemis, as you know, the narrator Homer just did a little bit ago.
Mm.
Describes her quite eloquently. Uh, Says if she asks if she's a goddess, says maybe she's Artemis, but if she's a human, three times blessed is her father and her queenly mother, and three times her brothers, that she must warm their hearts at the dances with the bloom of her beauty. And he says Odysseus, is one of the luckiest men alive. Oh no, he is one of the more blessed men who would sway her with gifts and lead her home as his bride. And then Odysseus says he's never laid eyes on anyone like her. I look at you and a sense of wonder takes me. And then it occurs to him that he saw on his journeys a palm tree at the temple of Apollo in Delos, that she is reminiscent of, that she is reminding him of. So there's this flashback to this sort of lithe movement of a palm tree, the sort of uprightness of it. And I think this is sort of the key part for our discussion here about beauty is he's not just lusting after her, he's sort of there's sort of an appreciation of her the same way that you would appreciate a beautiful tree or something like that. Like there's a deeper spread of what's being considered here.
Hmm.
And he says that the vision of the tree, um, he stood there gazing rapt for hours, and now I marvel at you, lady, rapt and enthralled, uh, too struck with awe to grasp you by the knees, though pain has ground me down. And then he explains how he has been shipwrecked for 20 days. The sea has swept him from the Isle of Ogygia, um, and has been tossed on the shore. He says, I don't believe the gods are going to stop. Long before that, they will give me more and more torment. Compassion, princess, uh, please give me a rag for cover, lead me to town, uh, basically help me. I'm bereft here. Um, and the princess, fairly wisely, says, Stranger, you're hardly a wicked man and no fool. Zeus himself hands our fortunes out to each of us in turn, good and bad, however Zeus prefers. He gave you pain, it seems you simply have to bear it.
Hmm.
I think that is a very important line. Maybe not to the discussion of beauty, but that line stuck out to me. Um, and then she says, Now that you're here, I am the daughter of the king. He is a great king, and we're welcoming people, and please, we'll take care of you. Um, so she asks her maids to not don't run away. Uh, let's see. You can't think of him as an enemy. There's no one alive, and there never will be, who'd reach Phaeacian soil and lay it to waste. The immortals love us too much for that. We live too far apart out in the surging sea, off at the world's end. No other mortals come to mingle with us. So this is just an unlucky wanderer, and we got to take care of him. So the maids come and they sort of tease each other, and you can sort of imagine these girls sort of laughing and laughing to each other. And they lead Odysseus down to a sheltered spot by the river. He finds a seat, and they give him some clothes to wear, and they give him some olive oil to oil himself up with as well. And he says, stay where you are, girls, way off. Let me clean myself. Let me rinse this brine off my shoulders and rub the oil myself. I won't bathe in front of you. I'd be embarrassed. Stark naked before young girls. And so the maids scurry back off to be with Nausicaa. Odysseus bathes himself, scrubs off all the brine, cleans himself, applies the oil, and Athena, as he steps out of the water, Athena makes him appear to grow taller and more massive, with curls running like hyacinth from his brow. Um, and so he's described as a very, very handsome man. And he walks down and sits apart from the girls, glistening in his glory, breathtaking, yes. And the princess gazed in wonder. And the princess says, All the gods can't be against this man. First he seemed appalling. Now he looks like a god himself. If only there were a man like that who could be called my husband. But enough, give the stranger food and drink. So Odysseus is cleaned up, he's fed, he's given something to drink, and then they start heading back to town. And Nausicaa comes up with a plan. She says, "Well, if you come with us all the way into town," and she describes the town and the sort of causeway that leads to it, and how important the ships are to the Phaeacians. But she says, if you come through there, our sea dogs, the sailors, may have some nasty gossip. Some old salt might mock us behind our backs, and sort of mock her for having this stranger following her around, and sort of laugh at her that she's carrying on with people from foreign parts and spurning all the Phaeacian men. She doesn't want to be subject to such gossip. So she encourages Odysseus to stay in a grove sacred to Athena, a grove of poplars along the road, where there's a spring and a meadow inside the grove. And he's to stay there and wait a while she and the maids carry on back to the house, and to her father and mother. And then she encourages Odysseus to eventually come in and try and find her mother, and to grasp her mother's knees and beg for help to return home. And she says, if only the queen will take you to her heart, then there's hope that you will see your loved ones reach your own grand house, your native land at last. So Odysseus, in all his wandering, is promised finally a return to Ithaca and to home and to his family. And so he does as she advises. The girls carry on. He stays in the grove. He prays to Athena, and Athena hears his prayer, but would not appear to him yet because she's still afraid of Poseidon, and Poseidon is still very mad at Odysseus for having blinded the Cyclops earlier on in the tale. And that seems to be the end of book 6. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right.
Short little bit of the Odyssey as a whole, but some interesting stuff in there.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for retelling that. I think you do a much better job than I do of that and right details, but not too many and kind of still can go through it.
I hope it's entertaining. Yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
yeah, oh, I could mention just hi historically, I think they used the oil because I think they didn't have soap. Like that's what I heard on a lecture, the ancient Greek lecture. So, yeah, I
Okay.
think they would rub themselves down and then kind of everybody had their own little scraper and they would like sort of scrape off the sort of whatever would mix in with the oil. And I think that's how they cleaned themselves before they had some kind of lye mixture or whatever that people used to use for soap. Oh.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I know one of the soap that I generally use is the Dr. Bronner's or the Castile soap, and that's made of mostly oils and then some other things. So
Mm,
that's interesting. Yeah.
mm.
Um,
Yeah, your soap might be more like their soap than like maybe what most people use.
yeah, the bar.
Mm.
Yeah, oh, that's neat. That's neat. I hadn't thought of it as like a getting the dirt off, cleansing kind of a thing. But yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah,
And it would also be nourishing to the skin. The fats and the oils kind of get absorbed that way.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
good for the body. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and
yeah.
that whole scene is kind of about cleansing, right? It's transforming, becoming anew, and there's all the theme of marriage around it and the theme of homecoming and everything.
hmm
But yeah, do you want to go straight into just the discussion of beauty, or is there anything you want to talk about just around this scene or anything?
Yeah, no, I think just going into it is good, and I think we can do that kind of by talking about the scene. I think because as I sort of alluded to as I was describing it, to me, one of the key moments in here is, Nausicaa is presented a couple of times as this very beautiful woman, and Odysseus approaches her, but I don't know. Odysseus had just spent 7 years with Calypso. Circe was the one that turned his men into pigs. Calypso was the one he was with her 7 years. She's forced to give him up through I think Mercury or Hermes comes down and tells her, "Hey, you got to let this guy go." So she builds him a raft and lets him go.
Or
Um,
he has to build his own raft, which is an
oh, he does?
interesting, yeah. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
most it's usually you send the guest off. I mean, you send the stranger off with a gift, but she kind of
Mhm.
makes him that a gift that helps you go on your way. But
Hmm.
makes him do it himself, which is kind of interesting little tidbit. But anyway, I'm just interrupting.
No,
Sorry.
that is no, no, no. That is interesting. Thank you for correcting me. I'm running off of a quick read through Wikipedia of like the
Yeah,
before and after of this, so I just had some context.
yeah.
I need to properly sit down and read the whole thing. But so he's coming from a space where he had been engaged with another woman for a long period. And
Mm,
here we see him approaching, uh, by all accounts, very desirable young woman.
mm,
But and she's described as beautiful, and he sees her as beautiful, but he sees her as beautiful, and there's no hint in the discussion that he wants to try and own her or capture her or rape her. The Greeks were notorious for rape, whether that meant actual like sexual transgressions or sort of taking them
improper. Yeah.
away. Yeah,
Mm,
inappropriate, socially inappropriate sexual relations or personally bad. But in any case, none of that is discussed, and he just approaches her with his desire to go home in mind, with his need for support and food. I mean, granted, he's starving, so that does make sense.
Mm,
But there's something in here for me about beauty and the right way to approach beauty
yeah.
of sort of seeing it. And I think immediately our our response in our culture these days is to want to either own it, we want to pick the flower, so to speak, or we want it to stay that way perfectly forever so that we're guaranteed access to that beauty. So the beauty provides us with something that we seem to feel like we need. And perhaps people, mostly women, but also men, like they want to be seen as beautiful so that they are valued. Um, the value means people want you around more. They're going to pay you more attention. Your needs are going to be met more easily um, than if you don't kind of care for your appearance. Obviously,
Mm,
there's a spectrum there. Like you should care for your appearance a little bit, but if you go a little too far, then you're obsessed with it. But
mm,
there's this idea of beauty as something that needs to be permanent. I would align that also with our culture's obsession with youth. Oh,
mm.
I'm getting older. Oh, I need something to cover these lines and my chin, whatever. My hair's going
Yeah.
gray. I'm
Yeah.
losing my hair. That there's this sense of youth and beauty as the only value, and the perfect maintenance or ownership of beauty as the best way to relate to it, a
Mm,
capturing of it as the best way to relate to it. And yet here, Odysseus does not even grab her by the knees to beg for aid. He stands at a distance and speaks to her somewhat as equals, or at least respectfully. He speaks to her
yeah.
respectfully.
Yeah.
And I think there's a pointer in there for me of how to relate to beauty, even so much as for me, beauty strikes me strongest in natural settings. I'm up on the mountain, I see the forest, or um, a few weeks ago, I was up in the Olympic National Forest in the rainforest. So I'm in amongst the giant trees and all the plants growing. And there's a beauty there. And even in that moment, in experiencing the beauty, I can try and grasp it, or I can just kind of open to it the way it is and let it be this momentary flash of beauty that stays while I'm looking, but not try and lock it down. And I think that's what's being sort of subtly pointed to here. And it seems to be kind of like, granted, like I've already admitted I haven't read the whole Odyssey, but if this is the moment before he finally makes it home to Ithaca, there is this way of him sort of being able to hold himself open to it without losing himself in it. So sort of there's a strengthening of him, of his sense of self in relation to a beautiful object. And I think that maybe is one of the things we need to develop in ourselves if we ever want to, go home and find our true family. So
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. But that was kind of how that bit spoke to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that idea a lot. Yeah. He wasn't trying to get her in some way, except maybe to understand what he's experiencing, in terms of getting. And,
Mhm.
what you said about in our culture, beauty is kind of, it seems like you're saying you didn't mention pornography, which I think is another way that, along with the things that you said, beauty is used for something. It's not like we view it as a good, we view it as good for something, this or that. And, yeah, and it's interesting that the things that we would behold in the past, art or architecture, and we'll get more into this later, I think, used
Mhm.
to aspire to beauty and to have a lot of beauty in them, but nowadays our art and architecture is usually for something, some kind of transgression, some kind of shocking value, some kind of personal expression of the artist kind of thing, rather than beauty along with maybe other values.
Indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, that is yeah, he respected her, and it caught his attention, and he held her at a distance, And even though and the only sexuality to the scene is indirect, where there's several allusions or there's several references to marriage, but that's all like a sort of socially kind of appropriate and connecting it to childbearing and family and home and everything, rather than to raw sexual desire. Which, as you pointed out, it was interesting. There was a raw virility, aggression in the telling of his looking like a mountain lion, kind of exulting in his power, kind of coming out that scared the girls, you know. And then we switch to a utterly civilized kind of, I don't know, beautiful scene. I find respect beautiful in some way when it's done, you know, real respect. It's not flattery or phoniness or whatever. Um, and it's interesting that he remembers Apollo in that scene, not Apollo directly, but another beautiful thing outside the altar or the at Delos, the altar of Apollo.
Mhm.
So there's this sense of harmony, or I mean, there's this reference to this harmony in this and order in there too.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, the reference to pornography is I think telling because um for sure, like that's sort of the cultural, particularly currently, the cultural aesthetics of beauty can be very sexually explicit or graphic or pornographic in that way. Um and and yet there there is a beauty in sexuality. Um but it depends on what it's used for. And I think that's kind of where beauty gets a bad rap these days. It's used for advertising. It's used for convincing us, oh, if we buy this thing, well, look, this beautiful person is associated with this thing, and the beauty hooks you, it pulls your attention in, and then you associate it with this thing, and then you want this thing, you know. And that's often layered into especially for advertisements aimed at men, it's layered into a sexual connotation. So the girl in the bikini eating the hamburger,
Mm,
is kind of, I think there was a Carl's Jr. Maybe I should mention it. There's some sort of advertisement at some point that went that way. But there's in all of that, it's still attached to ownership. That there's a drive within us that wants to own beauty. And I guess the question for me is when is that um when is that worthy and when is that a mistake, you know?
mm,
Um I think there's an element of consumption. I don't know. It is truly hard to draw a line there because there's clearly some cases where it's bad. And yet you can't make every case bad because the appreciation of something beautiful is good and the wanting to cultivate beauty is good, but wanting to do it for its own sake maybe is not good, or wanting to do it as a means of making yourself somehow more important because of it.
mm,
Um, yeah, and again, it's just the Odysseus's relationship to this beautiful young girl is kind of there's a key there for me, um, that I think is important.
mm,
Because he sings her praises like directly to her.
mm,
He describes her as the narrator does. He describes her as goddess like, as akin to Artemis.
mm,
Um, and so he's not blind to it, but he's not moved to take actions that ultimately wouldn't be respectful of the beauty or wouldn't cultivate it more so.
Mm,
It's almost like in trying to own it, we ruin it.
mm,
Um, the flower metaphor keeps coming to mind because I got a vase of peonies here on the table. But you know, picking a flower, but you bring
mm,
it inside, but then the flower's dead, right? So in a flower, it's probably not so bad. I got these at the store; they were already picked. Um, but metaphorically speaking, I think there's something to that. In trying to own beauty, we sort of lose it.
mm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, that seems consistent with what he compares her to, is the palm tree outside of the Apollo's altar. And he
hmm
just, I think you said he gazed at it for hours, right? I mean, this is true appreciation of it, this worshiping of it in a way.
hmm
And
hmm
he doesn't, it's interesting, he doesn't worship her, but he admires her. And yeah, I think that is a powerful scene. Something about how maybe it's a little like how you said you can appreciate nature. You take it in, you're a part of it. I mean, it draws you in, and you become a part of something, and it can change. It can give change your way of looking at things too. And that's a very different way from advertising or pornography, which is it's for a specific kind of low purpose, and it's not related to truth. There's
hmm
not much truth in pornography or in advertising. The woman who's trying to get you to buy the burger, I mean, that has nothing to do with beauty. I mean, a beautiful meal could be something like that, but this is a little different, right? It's trying to
hmm
attract you. It's not really for necessarily need that expands into need for food that expands into other things, love with family or something like that that leads you on to better things in life. And there's the sharing too, which is the fast food presumably tends to maybe be a little more lustful, a little more selfish in some way,
hmm
limited anyway,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
and
it's
porn too.
definitely, and it's not often something that you create to share with other people. You just sort of buy it and you eat it. It's
Yeah.
literally fast food. I mean, one of the things that we were discussing prior to the recording was the aesthetics of the smooth, and I think I wasn't planning to bring that up so soon, but I think that's exactly what we're talking about with fast food. Is there's no, you don't have to get the food raw. You don't have to prepare it. You don't have to lay it out. You don't have to decide how much to make. It's all decided. You just go and you say, I want this, and they give it to you, and you eat it, and you're done. There's
Yeah.
no development. There's no cultivation. There's no real beauty to it. And yet it's advertised with beauty in a way that the core assumption there is they're going to trick you. They're going to make you associate sexual desire or lust for beauty with their particular brand of fast food or brand of car or brand of whatever it is. And then therefore you will associate the two and your desire will be transferred onto the product. And so that's inherently it's like stage magician work. It's a bait and switch kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So it's using beauty with the intent to lie. It's using attraction. It's using maybe eros. It's using desire as with the intent to lie. Um, yeah.
I would say though it's a little different from lying. I get this from Vervaeke. He says it's sorry for using for cussing, but like he says it's bullshit rather than lying, which is an interesting it seems like a useful differentiation because I mean people know that there's not the bikini girl has nothing to do with the burger. You know, they know that. But so it's not exactly lying to you, but it's making you unconcerned with what the truth of what you're seeing, because it's a commercial,
Mhm.
it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, it's a funny thing. It even gets postmodern where they kind of play with the fact that it's just a commercial. They do that a lot nowadays.
Mhm.
But yeah, but it's not concerned with the truth, which is in a way, in some ways, maybe worse than lying to you, because if you're lied to, maybe you'll still be concerned with finding out the truth later on. But with
Mhm.
bullshit, it's more like, especially when there's a lot of it around, it maybe makes you sort of have a haziness and to where there's maybe a cynicalness and you're less concerned with the truth of your experience of things in the world.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, that's a subtle, but I think a good distinction.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think this touches on the other topic we were throwing about of the hermeneutics of suspicion.
Yeah, yeah,
In like if you are in an environment of heavy bullshit and haziness and lack of concern with what's true, then you're going to be suspicious because many things are suspicious. They're not
yeah,
actually what they present themselves to be. So, to a certain degree, you would move out of that bullshit with a little bit of suspicion, but that suspicion can become toxic, and then you're suspicious of everything,
yeah.
right? And then you're like not sure what's true anymore. You're not sure that truth even exists anymore, and I mean, maybe you can speak more to that from the Vervaeke course because I didn't take that, but
Yeah, yeah, I agree with what you said, and just sort of, he uses that term hermeneutics of suspicion. It's kind of Nietzsche, Freud, Marx, maybe one or two other kind of German philosophers, modern philosophers have kind of helped us question things in some way, but kind of also society has come into this sort of radical questioning of everything, and it's not just questioning, it's more like a doubting. And so for instance, we seem not to really even believe in the value of beauty anymore, except in the literal value of like attracting someone or selling someone or something like that. um you and I were talking about how art and architecture tends not to be beautiful. That's not a sophisticated thing. That's not an important thing for art to be. It has to just shock you, has to express the individuality, the uniqueness, the originality of the artist or the movement or whatever, has to transgress some tradition or traditional value in some way. And that's where the value is. It's not in beauty. So there's this, yeah, the hermeneutics of suspicion seems to be something where, yeah, we're kind of suspicious of everything. We don't trust authoritative accounts. This obviously has gone on even more in recent years with COVID and conspiracy thinking and all that kind of thing. So,
yeah. Yeah, it's I'm interested in the it's an ongoing question for me what you're talking about in regards to like art. I went to art school in the 90s, 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s for college, and then my ex-girlfriend was getting her master's at an art school here in the Northwest. This would have been the late when was that? The mid 2010s, somewhere in there.
mm,
So, we were still together at the time, and um, I still wish her all the best. I think she's a great artist. But in her cohort of fellow, MFA candidates, there were people doing art that was very conceptual. Um, and and her work, I think, was we sort of broke up midway through, so I don't want to speak to her whole journey because I don't know what it was. But my understanding of it was like they were encouraged to be kind of more conceptual, like, well, what's the idea behind, and it becomes almost like a visual philosophy, philosophy meaning in a sort of a pejorative sense, in that it's just like you're building these ideas, and then you make a physical thing to represent them, and people are supposed to get your ideas by looking at the physical thing, but
Yeah.
there's no sense of beauty. There's no sense of conveying something that is inherently stimulating to some part of our nervous system that isn't just our intellectual brain.
Yeah.
It narrows the window down to just appealing to the intellectual brain. Um, and I think that's kind of a sad thing for art to be moving in that direction. And then you mentioned
Yeah.
architecture, and like, oh my God, I'll just complain about that for a minute. Of like, most modern buildings are so ugly. They're just these blocky, dark, like there's no I don't understand. Like, I'm not an architect. I didn't go to architecture school. The little bit of architecture students that I knew in college were worked to the bone. They were exhausted. So maybe there's something to that. I don't know. Um, but like, surely somebody wants to make something look good. I guess maybe they don't want to pay for it, the construction companies. I'm thinking, like new buildings being built around the city. Obviously, there are still very interesting, like if you're building like a new gallery, or you're building like, I don't know, like the Obama thing, presidential center that got built in Chicago. You could argue whether or not that's beautiful or ugly, but somebody clearly tried to make it something. It's not just a square block. They're trying to do something with it.
Hmm.
So leaving politics and that particular object aside, just those kind of objects, those kind of structures are still being built.
Hmm.
But when it comes to like the new, housing, the new apartment building, they're dude, it's so dead. There's no life to them at all. There's no thought behind them. There's no sense of wanting to make them appealing to the eye in any way. It's almost like the value for that is we're blind to it at this point. It's like we're almost like colorblind, but beauty blind in that sense.
Yeah.
Um, it's sad.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, we don't try to make things beautiful. There's no ornamentation. It's minimalist. It's smooth. Yeah, it's just utilitarian. And I
Mhm.
would say, yeah, the you mentioned the Obama library and just other things that are made the sort of, I don't know, the monumental architecture that we have now, as opposed to stuff in the past, is just, yeah, I don't think it, I think it tends to be not only not beautiful, but often very ugly. I mean, just
Mhm.
grotesque to look at. And yeah, it's conceptual. It's supposed to mean all these different things, which maybe you don't get until you hear the long description with lots of, aesthetic terms and everything from the artists themselves. But, it's like,
Mhm. Yeah,
I don't know.
which is interesting because like if you research like older art and architecture especially, a lot of that did have secret messages or implied intent by the artist in it. So that's not, I guess I would say that I'm realizing that's not exactly foreign to art, but the lack of it being anything beautiful is foreign.
Mhm.
That's um, the devaluing of aesthetics as I guess as sort of useless. Like
Yeah.
I guess people just don't care would be my guess is like, yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think they have different values. I mean, I think
Hmm.
elites, architect elites, just like all elites, we don't kind of have transcendental values. It's more like we're looking down and back and trying to transgress the past in some way, invert it in some way, or up at beauty and trying to, yeah, comment on it rather than participate in it. Yeah, I just don't think
Hmm.
we believe in those things. I mean, yeah, art always has meaning. There's meaning in making something proportional. Or like I think in Japanese palaces, they're like the only Asian uh, country that has non-symmetrical palaces, and there's like meaning there too. But
Hmm.
yeah, there's all and this and the golden mean or whatever. Yeah. And then I thought maybe you meant like, even Freemason type of, little secret society kinds of stuff. I mean, there's definitely that kinds of stuff, but it's still within the framework like literature can be of still being beautiful, having certain, I don't know, beauty principles like proportionality or some kind of natural rhythm or something kind of coming out, some kind of harmony kind of along with all that other stuff. And I think I think we don't believe in that. We believe in shockingness, personal expression. We uphold the artist as kind of a godlike kind of figure. And yeah, transgressing kind of suppose common tastes or the past or something like that. It's always, you know, when you see reviews even of movies, it's always edginess, uniqueness, originality, expressiveness. Those kinds of words are valued. But you'll never, I don't think you hardly will ever see some kind of description of art nowadays where they'll talk about harmoniousness or beauty or something that's sort of some kind of synonym for goodness. So I just
Hmm.
don't think that's part of our value system.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, if I was, I don't know, if I was making a building, what would I do differently, or how would I feel about it? Or if I was making, a piece of art or whatever, if I was making something,
Mm,
there's there's a certain sense where trying to embellish something with beautiful things feels superfluous or extra work, like to get it right. It feels sort of like, why would I bother?
mm,
I'm just doing this thing. And so I can kind of understand. It's like the muscle for beauty, or for the desire to make the world beautiful. The desire for beauty is, we're distant from it almost as a culture. Like we don't have enough of the sense of beauty in ourselves to understand why it's important, and that the need to begin to cultivate that might be really important. Um, the sort of, I mean, I can see it coming from a certain amount of order, a certain amount of symmetry, harmony, perspective. One of the things that one of the places where beauty really does present itself in my own life is in photography. I'm not a professional photographer, but I take a lot of pictures, and um, the the important thing for me there is always composition of the image,
mm,
layout of the objects, and the relationship to them. So I
mm,
have my desktop on my computer is a photo I took years and years ago in New York of a tree, just like not a palm tree, but a different kind of a tree, but a tree. It's growing. So there's like the scene is the tree in this red earth. I think maybe it was cedar bark or something, but in the image it just looks red. It's in this octagon shaped kind of dirt spot surrounded by a lawn, and then in the far distance you can see other trees and like buildings. So it was like a residential complex or something
mm,
somewhere in New York,
mm,
back when I used to live in New York. But the angle, I just lucked out. I don't think I planned this, but the angle that I took the picture of the tree at, like the way the lens curves the trunk of the tree,
mm,
presents sort of the not the crown, but the boughs of the tree, the leaves of the tree as being like sort of slightly high, but then the ground, like you can see the ground kind of curves. So there's something about just the specific point, that you can strike, and it enlivens something in the soul.
mm,
And I think if I were to sort of make a prescription, or make a hypothesis about what might resolve things, is like more the realization of the beauty that's already around and
Yeah.
the ability to recognize it, to
Yeah.
take a moment and to stop and to feel it and to learn what it's like to feel beauty in our system again, whether that's a tree or the way the light's hitting something or the movement of the water, the way it reflects things. But to do that, you have to slow down. And I don't think our culture is very good at slowing down and noticing that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so right. So you're kind of talking about recovering a sense of beauty, not yet at least talking about the big ideas maybe we have of the values or God or whatever, but the slow mindfulness. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
because
always
I
think
feel like,
mm.
well, go ahead.
No, 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 go ahead. No.
I'm just thinking that if we want to make make society beautiful again, or bring beauty back into society, like we have to start finding it. We have to start paying attention to it and learning why it's valuable. To feel in our nervous systems why it's valuable. And then I feel like as we begin to get a taste for that and a skill at noticing beauty and recognizing it, then we can start to learn how to cultivate it and how to reflect it and what beauty means to us nowadays. That would be sort of a building towards that transcendent value system that, you slash Vervaeke were talking about that would sort of lift that up. But it would have to start with sort of the humility of like we're not quite sure how to do that anymore.
Yeah.
We don't know what beauty means to our culture. Real beauty, not just, aesthetic
Yeah.
good looks or something like that.
Yeah.
Prettiness, not just prettiness, but like
Yeah.
actual beauty. Like what would that mean? What is that experience these days? How do we relate to it with our current socio-political personality, neurological structure? Like we have to start growing the beauty back into our nervous system and our way of seeing the world, our meaning making. And then maybe that will blossom into a more beautiful society. But I think to try and just force beauty. Oh, well, let's just put a bunch of Baroque spirals and curls on all the
Yeah.
architecture, but not actually find out whether that speaks to us, I think would be kind of the wrong direction.
Yeah.
That would be to kind of force it. It would be, I mean, we were talking before the recording of sort of nostalgically looking to the past or sort of cosplaying what it used to mean. And I think that it would be that. It wouldn't be a true resurrection of something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would say though that I mean whoever's making buildings, if they could if it doesn't seem natural to them to be so completely utterly utilitarian or just sort of conceptually shocking, they probably some of them at least would have something in their soul already, some ideas that they might have, some from the past, and whatever to sort of do whatever little ornamentation and things maybe if but if they feel that sort of permission or like there's something in the culture that would allow that or not suppress that, not laugh at it or dismiss it or something like that. I think that would be, that could be something that we could start seeing in our architecture and things. And not talking about you and I or people like us that don't build things, kind of trying to put those ideas on them. But I think some of them would already have some of those kinds of ideas and all that. Um,
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point. I think a lot of um, people who are drawn to that kind of work, whether we're talking artists or we're talking architects or we're talking anything else, writers, even advertising people, I would imagine, like
yeah,
a lot of people have good values, they just don't have a chance to express them. There's some sort
yeah,
of lowest common denominator quality to our culture that sort of keeps everything below a certain threshold.
yeah,
Um, Not sure what that's about, but it does very much limit the beauty. It limits the chance for anything sort of transcendent to come through.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think
Um,
you make a very good point about the overall kind of culture having a genuineness, a mindfulness, attentiveness to what is happening now, what is true for us, and yeah, being humble about what that really means rather than starting to rush forward, putting forward ideas and kind of getting conceptual ourselves about what is natural or what is good or what is beautiful. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm reminded of the shamanic work I used to do with Malidoma Somé, the guy from Africa. I've mentioned him a few times.
Mm,
But in a ritual with him, you would be given a list of things to bring. So, like if you're making an ancestor shrine, everybody brings pictures of their ancestors, and they bring red cloth because red is the color associated with the ancestors. So you
mm,
want to do that, and candles and maybe some other things,
mm,
other shrines, other different kinds of things. But the thing that always surprised me was that he would spend like the morning or the evening of the previous day sort of telling us, talking, holding court, speaking, storytelling of what we were going to be doing. And then he'd divide people up into groups, and like this group would be in charge of the ancestor shrine, and they would gather everybody's stuff and they would set it up. Maybe there'd be a table in the room that they set it up, or if you're working outside, maybe you bring a table, there's a rocks formation you can build it on or something like that.
mm.
But it would just be people coming together with the intent of making something respectful. He wouldn't give any instructions. He'd just be like, take this and go make a shrine. You can set it up however you want. And because people were invested in making it beautiful, making it special, they were trying to give it some form of respect. The results were always amazing. It was just people cobbling something together, but they were given a chance to express their sense of beauty, to express their sense of gratitude and aesthetic and respect for what we were undertaking. And the results were always surprising in a very heartwarming way. It was like, look what we are capable of as a group without any, real formal training or instruction of what it needs to look like. No blueprints, no like step by step way IKEA instructions, something like that. Just the spontaneity and the creativity of human beings can create beauty on its own, but it has to want to, and it has to believe that it can, and it has to be sort of valued. Um,
Yeah. That sounds
yeah,
great. I mean, sounds like that reminds me of what Vervaeke's talked about as the sacred. So he tries to sort of unite people of different religious faiths and everything by finding what is common. And, he's a cognitive scientist, but he's also deeply invested in religion and philosophy. But he says he can define the sacred, and part of the definition is that has it has something to do with the real. And so it sounds like what you were describing with the ritual is there was something real coming through and you made something sacred, and because you brought all of, those things, those personal intention and everything that you mentioned to it.
yeah, yeah. It's almost like there was, because of the context of what we were doing, because of the story, the meaning that was provided. That was like, we're doing a fire ritual. Here's what that looks like. Here's what you do.
Mm,
Um, and the this we all went into it knowing that we were taking action with the intention of contacting the sacred in a certain way according to the culture of the Dagger people that was being brought to us. Um, and that's the intention there, is to create something sacred. So it's almost like going into it with that intention. The sacred is already there for us, and we are meeting it, or we are unveiling its presence by giving it form.
mm,
But we've brought the idea that this is a sacred act to what we're doing. And so in that, the beauty kind of presents it sort of almost like I don't want to say secondhand because that cheapens it, but like it comes along with it. It's
mm,
it's part of the natural unfolding of the sacred.
mm.
Um, yeah, yeah. Just the beauty and the goodness and the trueness of it. I mean, it's sort of a place where those three things are the same. You see where you can separate them out, you know. But you see how there's just a rightness to it, a harmony, and I think that's maybe a good label for the thing that comes before the split into like, is it true? Is it good? Is it beautiful?
Mm,
If it's harmonious in a certain way, it's harmonious on enough dimensions. It already meets those criteria.
yeah. Yeah, and honestly, I get a sense of beauty just hearing you talk about that. And then that opens me up to, so there's this thing that I don't know about much. You've talked about it before, but I wasn't there. I don't know this stuff very well, but it opens me up to finding out what is true about it. Whereas
Hmm.
if something you describe was sort of there was something wrong about it. It was ugly. It was disgusting in some way. I would be repulsed by it. But instead, I'm drawn into this. And you described it a little bit, and I'm seeing it some in my mind, and I'm imagining the people a little bit. And this is opening me up to goodness and to truth, to what, like the truth of what, maybe what I think of as true religion, or maybe what is a good community and what is good sort of communal energy for people to bring, and how intention kind of feeds that, and everything. So it's the good, the true, and the beautiful is even coming through in your telling about this thing, which is also a point that Elaine Scarry, who wrote the book I mentioned at the beginning, on beauty and being just. She talks about that as being something that beauty does. It propagates itself. You see a beautiful thing or hear something beautiful, you want to make beautiful things, and I don't, maybe that was part of the beauty of the ritual too, is you want to tell people about it.
Hmm. 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 Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because that's the opposite response to the one I was sort of, or we were sort of critiquing earlier, of wanting to capture or own or consume the beauty. Like, oh, I must make it
Right.
mine. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
this is beautiful, and it makes me want to give or create or generate more of it in the world
Yeah.
because beauty engenders that value, and the gender it engenders the value of itself in
Yeah.
us in
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you become beautiful in some way, but yeah, like many truly good things, yeah, it doesn't get used up when you get it. You want to give it.
Hmm.
Yeah, like
Hmm.
love and other kinds of amazing, opening, transcendent kinds of things.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
oh, did you want to add something? Okay.
No,
So
no, go
I,
ahead, go
I
ahead.
I wanted to get to something that I thought was interesting about the Scary book that I'd never thought of, that I get from this John Vervaeke too, through he has a Peterson Academy lecture on beauty. If anybody happens to it's behind a paywall, but it's good. But is that beauty is related to being wrong, to making mistakes, and not like the beautiful experience is wrong, but gives you, it can make you, so it draws your attention in, and it can make you deliberate, think, contemplate, and realize you yourself need to change. I'm sort of thinking that Rilke poem about Apollo, bringing it back to that again, on the bust of Apollo, something like that. And it sort of describes the bust of Apollo, and then it ends with the abrupt line, "You must change your life."
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
there's this idea that that you're confronted with beauty too. So this is sort of different than sort of some kind of aesthetics that's sort of like with advertising or porn. It's sort of this drug-like bullshit for you, where you're not like thinking, I want to be a better person after something like that, but with
Yeah.
with Odysseus, or with Skari saying about beauty, it can make you want to be a better person. So she just specifically, in the part of the Odyssey that we related, book 6, he sees Nausicaa, and it's he's telling her something like, "You're the most beautiful person I've ever seen," or something like that, right? And he's like, "Oh, wait a second." He stopped himself and he's like, "Realize, wait, I was wrong. Wait, yeah, there's been another beautiful thing too, and that was this wonderful tree outside of the Temple of Apollo." And so Skari kind of talks about how that's a wonderful quality of beauty, is that it can educate you, and that sort of leads you to truth. You're sort of going back into your experiences. Is this thing that seems, this beautiful thing that seems unprecedented, is there a precedent? And then you're going forward and you're wanting to propagate it. So it's this whole like kind of contemplative experience, and that can be transformative. That's linking to truth and to goodness becoming better. That
Mm.
I was kind of struck by. I never
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
about that.
That's interesting. I'm what's coming up for me in response to that is the idea of like the Rilke poem, like you must change your life. The way that an experience of real beauty calls all of our other values into question. You know, the values by which we normally live our lives. Um, I'll go back to the forests and the mountains for me because that's one of the places that speaks to me pretty strongly. But like, I'll go out there and I'm so struck by both the beauty of the experience, just the sheer like, wow, this is these trees, they're so tall the way, and then also the beauty of how harmonious everything is the the plants, how they grow and they intertwine and everything shares the earth and the animals run through and like there's no real one thing against another, shy of predators, but even that the predators aren't trying to eat all of the whatever, they're just eating what's there that they can find. But there's I see all of that and then it has me question my own values, like in my own life. How am I relating to my life? How interrelated am I to my life? You know,
Mm,
um, how am I making use of my own resources? Am I valuing the things that are given to me? Um, and it's heightened too by the loss of beauty. You know, we have wildfires now every late summer, early fall. We have, things burn around here. And some of my very dear places that I used to go to are now ash and char.
mm,
Um, and there's a certain sort of stark beauty to that, but it's certainly not the same thing.
mm,
And I just, it's a moment of like, if more people could see the same beauty that I see when I go out into the woods, um, we'd be a lot more moved to prevent whatever is causing these wildfires and these rising temperatures and all of that stuff. We want to do something about it because we would have that system of the valuation in our hearts or in our nervous system. You
mm,
know, we'd have a sense of it instead of um, just ignoring it because it's not bullshit because we're so used to the bullshit. You know,
mm.
um,
Yeah. Yeah, or yeah. Yeah, so you go into nature and you take it in and you kind of learn from it. So you talk about that harmony. Is there a sort of seamlessness? You say you come back to your normal life and you sort of question whether there's how much of a natural seamlessness to the relationality of you and everything in your life. I was sort of one thing I
hmm,
thought of is sort of maybe, do we have too much stuff? Is there stuff that we don't need, that we bought on impulse, that we, yeah, really don't need? You mentioned use of resources like in nature, like there's probably, there's not really any waste, I guess, I mean, so, um, yeah.
Mm, yeah.
And that,
Yeah, yeah, relationality. I think that's really the key of it for me because what we have with Odysseus is he relates to Nausicaa. She is a subject. She is a person. She's not an object. He addresses her as an equal, or if not, maybe sort of she's a princess or she's beautiful. He's sort of whatever, but
mm,
he treats her. He relates to her. He doesn't he doesn't sort of shut her down into just his concept of what she is.
mm.
Um, kind of holding himself in that way. And I just think that both relating to our life, like, in the story, we're exploring coming back from the forest and questioning our lives, or the Rilke poem, The Beauty Makes Us Clear, we must change our life. Like, how related are we to our life, and how related are the parts of our life to other parts of our life? How well do they harmonize together? How beautiful is the arrangement of, you know, um, the state of my house and the the things that flow in and flow out of it? And do I have friends over? Does my home light up socially? Do I value that? If I do, then but I don't have people over, why is that? There's a beauty there that's lost. There's a harmony there that's lost. Um, yeah, it's just there's something about the integrating everything to everything else that I think beauty suggests. And that to me is what I don't know what the question is that it asks me is, if I have to change, if it is confronting me to change my life, I have to wake up and see what's possible and what beauty suggests is possible. But I know also, well, if you want to respond to that, you can, but I also have a question.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to respond a little bit, but yeah, let's ask your question after that. I think relationality can be a very, very good thing to try to know and get a sense of in your life. I get this from Rousseau. He says that's the most important study that you can make in your life is what are your proper relations. He applies this all the way to metaphysics, and I think tries to sort of solve the modern dilemma of materialism versus idealism in philosophy, or all of these questions of the larger meaning of life and the nature of the universe that can kind of drive people crazy and make people feel purposeless or meaningless or sort of lost in this sea, this sort of, to allude to Odysseus. um
nice.
Yeah, yeah. So I just, yeah, I like that relationality, and I just wanted to, and about the Odysseus book 6 also, we're talking about how he beholds Nausicaa and appreciates her beauty too. It's not just her, but what she's participating in, the her stage of life. She's waking up, she's maturing. It's about time to get married. There's all this web of kind of relations, and both she and Odysseus, like a couple of times, mention marriage, or the natural flow of life and connection to others and everything, as well as survival that they mention, which is very key to kind of Odysseus is coming up to her too, as his survival. But it occurred to me as you were talking that it's notable that he is in such a desperate place in terms of his survival, but when he goes to her, so he triply needs her to kind of get food and to get recovered and go back home. But he doesn't approach her like that. He appreciates her beauty and everything. Um, but yeah, anyway, yeah, yeah. But you wanted to ask a question.
Well, yeah, no, I like that the element of him appreciating her beauty is a way of relating to her without falling back on just his needs,
Yeah.
and whether that's the sort of rapacious predatory nature or just the desperate survival nature.
Mm,
He doesn't fall back on either of those. He's able to address her person to person and
mm,
appreciate her for what she is and relate his own experience to her of the tree and sort of all of that. Um, and still be able to speak his needs without sort of collapsing.
mm,
I think that's important. But yeah, the question was there was that quote you sent me from the Scary book about the relationship between beauty and truth.
mm.
And I thought if I can find that quickly, I believe if my email hasn't, yeah, here it is.
Mm.
Um, Beauty ignites the desire for truth by giving us with an electric brightness shared by almost no other uninvited, freely arriving perceptual event, the experience of conviction and experience as well of error. This liability to error, for which beauty has so often been belittled, has sometimes been cited as evidence of its falsehood and distance from truth, when it is instead the case that our very aspiration for truth is its legacy. And I wonder, so I can see the link between beauty and beguiling and the sort of idea of like, oh, that, stereotype of, oh, that woman's so beautiful, I would do anything to be with her. And then you get her, and then it turns out y'all aren't as compatible as you thought, and you're kind of miserable. And so the initial draw of beauty that you thought would satisfy you ends up being not satisfying. And so there's the sense of it being a lie.
Yeah.
Um, but she links it here with a desire for truth, that beauty kind of inspires us to undergo a giant labor, sort of how she puts it. I just thought that was interesting. I don't know if you have anything to speak to on that.
I mean, so there's obviously the a part in Odysseus, which is maybe like an ideal kind of version of that. He brings it back to the sort of altar of Apollo, the god of truth, and a tree growing next to it. You've talked about how trees are beautiful. They're symmetrical in terms of their roots growing down into the earth and the tree itself growing up into the light, into the air, into the sun. Again, reference to kind of Apollo there.
Hmm.
And I mean, just in the simple sort of stereotypical example you gave of like a guy looking at a beautiful woman and lusting after her, wanting her, but sort of being beguiled by the beauty, not knowing who she is or what their relationship will actually be like. And it's actually it's not beautiful. Um, I think so. It just in that same kind of simple example you could think of how it could re- instead, depending on, if they're more like Odysseus, if they're wily, if they're intelligent, if they're wise, most of all, and he's linked to Athena. Athena is his patroness. She's the one that brought him and Nausicaa together out of their sleep, which is kind of an interesting thing. And he's coming from the ocean. We like to make those like kind of associations with like the unconscious and dreaming and everything. And there's the rage of Poseidon that's driven him there and everything. And but anyway, just in this sort of simple example, I would think, you could, instead of being beguiled, there is a sense of being struck by this sort of beautiful woman. But as that's as you're having that experience, you could also think like, I want to be worthy of the quality that I see in this beautiful woman that makes me want to be more beautiful as a person. And if you want to be beautiful as a person, you have to be linked to goodness and truth, you know. You
Hmm.
I don't see the way I see it, you want to be, yeah, like Odysseus later when he after he bathes and he looks taller and more noble like a god. You want to be like that. You want to be more godlike. You don't want to be more animal-like. You
Hmm.
want to be more godlike to be worthy of this woman. And we know just so many things, this sort of Freudian or Darwinian maybe, but I think so many of the efforts, good and bad, but many good things, works of art and everything, even from unrequited love, but have been done by men to try to to show themselves worthy. It's in a way a giving of a gift or something, which Odysseus also mentions is sort of bridal kind of wedding kind of thing. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, so that's part of my simple kind of answer of how yes, beauty can be associated with error in a bad way and falling into error, bad things, but it can also be like I realize that I'm not the best version of myself I could be, and I want to be better. And so I see that my life has been in error. I've been kind of lazy or kind of inattentive. And I want to be more alive and attentive. I want to be a better man. So
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
part of my very simple kind of answer.
Yeah, I could even see that because I was going to ask, I was going to ask about this, and then I sort of answered my own question. So I guess I'll just explain my thinking. But you know, if we're talking about beauty as a incentive or a fire to power, a power to like drive yourself to become a better person. Um, the question was like, well, but you could still do that for a beautiful woman, make yourself better, win her over, and then it turns out there's not a connection. You know, there's
Hmm.
some sort of something that goes wrong there. Um, and but then I was thinking like, well, especially when you were talking about like wanting to improve your attention and stuff like that, it's like, well, you only saw like one level of beauty, physical beauty. You know, what about um psychological beauty, emotional beauty, intellectual beauty. Um, and especially if we were talking about, dating and relationships and stuff, the beauty there is what somewhat synonymous with compatibility because even if we're just talking physical looks, there are women who some men find very attractive and other men do not find attractive.
Hmm.
And so you can sort of build that scale up of like there are some personality types that some men find and some for men that some women find appealing. And there's a level of intellectual engagement that for some women that's appealing, for other women it's a turn on. So there's a beauty and compatibility and relationship are kind of very strongly tied when we're talking about
Yeah.
about dating and whatnot. But
Yeah,
even in
definitely.
general, like the promise of beauty, the experience of it gives us, like we were saying before, it gives us a desire for more, for generating that, for experiencing that, for cultivating it. And I think to learn how to do, like, to realize that that's possible is to realize we've been wrong. So that makes sense to me. And then as far as the beauty and the wrongness, and then to realize that like Rilke says, we must change our life. Well, how do we do that? what's true, what's a good way to go, how do we cultivate a more beautiful life, and then we're right back to where you were saying, where you can't really separate the three, and to create more beauty, you have to become more good and more hunting after the truth. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I'm glad that you I'm glad you filled out that example of just a beautiful woman. And so, yeah, we initially are kind of thinking just the looks, but then it's like to be truly beautiful, actually, it involves all sorts of other things. And then I'm thinking, even in the beholding of her and Odysseus with Nausicaa too, there are other things than just purely the physical. There's like what went into this, the cleanliness, the stance. It talks about how Athena, there's another translation talks about how Athena, so wisdom and the divine, makes her legs stop trembling when she sees Odysseus and stand firmly in the ground like a tree. There's a presence there, there's a calmness, a focus. There's a
Mm.
seeing what he really is. He's not like a mountain lion in all ways. He's a man who's desperately in need and who's godlike himself and good too. And yeah, and just looking at a beautiful woman, if you look at her for a while or talk to her, you'll start to see if maybe she is beautiful or not, or
Mhm.
how beautiful she might be, or how beautiful the relationality might be, the connection between you guys, your compatibility. So beauty your experience of beauty will change and will increase or decrease. It's not just she's just a statue, and it's not. And so this is kind of Vervaeke's point that beauty has something to, it's not objective or subjective. It's transjective. It's this word he has where it
Hmm.
has to, it's not in you only, it's not in the thing you're sensing only, but in the whole experience.
Interesting. Yeah, that I think we were talking about this a couple sessions ago, but I had been reading Persig's book, the Zen and Motorcycle Maintenance, and he talks about quality that same way, of it being the thing that comes kind of before the subject object split. It's the experience before that. And for him, like tuning into that is, I think, somewhat enlightenment, or it's sort of the developing that develops you towards, and yeah, I can see that, because the experience of beauty that we want to capture, like we try to capture it to carry it with us, but the actual experience that gives rise to the desire to capture is transjective. We are seeing a thing, we are having an internal experience of it, and to the extent that we feel that beauty inside ourselves, we we are sort of one with the object. There's not really a distinction between the two. Um, and I think that then trying to collapse that down into an owning of that experience, you're already severing that transjective experience. Um, Whereas if you can hold yourself and the thing at the same time, then you're kind of standing like Odysseus with Nausicaa on the beach. You know, you're able to appreciate and feel without needing to shut down or own or grasp at. Um, yeah, yeah, that's neat. I like that transjective.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think we did a lot to kind of unpack beauty here. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I don't think so. That covers most of the notes we had going in, and it's been a fun conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I thought it was great. I think this helped me to understand beauty, and I hope it did for everybody else. Well,
Yeah, me too. Me too.
thanks for talking with me, Ian.
My pleasure. See you next time.
Yeah, see you next time.